Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Katherine Kearney on the podcast. She's Ms.Calgary 2020, as well as an IDFA, MPAA, Elite Pro Fitness athlete, coming to us all the way from the Great White North that is Canada. I love to have some Canadian guests on here. She's, from the Calgary area, which is someone that I've always wanted to have on as someone from Calgary. And I mean, go Flames, I guess. They won last night. So, I mean, good for them. I mean, geez, I have to deal with the Wild. So, don't even get me started on that. I mean, that's all Minnesota sports is just constantly basically just punching yourself in the private parts constantly is, what I like to describe being a Minnesota sports fan is. That's the closest thing that I could compare it to. But before I get into that, because I mean, that's a whole podcast that I'm planning of, and that's going to be, 100 hours long. What's the weather like in Calgary today?
Well, I'm coming in from Canmore, Alberta, about an hour and a half from Calgary. I was born and raised in Calgary, so I'll let that one go, Ryan. All good.
She's Canadian, so I know she's going to be polite about everything anyway. So, that's what I expected, yeah.
It's sunny here. Sunny blue skies.
I never thought that it'd be the day where someone from Canada would have better weather than me. But I guess, it's raining here all day and it's, just dreary. But hey, for someone of my skin tone, I mean, this is the perfect day to go out and do stuff. Because if I go out in the sun, I'm either going to get burnt to an absolute crisp or I'm going to get farmer's tan, where let's be honest, that is not a real tan. But before I get into, also, I could get into my weather woes because, that's a whole nother 10-hour podcast. Why don't you give us your backstory on what really inspired and motivated you to get in shape and how that led to where you're at right now?
Oh, thanks. Absolutely. So first of all, thank you for having me here. And it's an absolute pleasure to meet you and talk to you today. I'd say 5 or 6 years ago, I needed something out of the office. Actually, I was experiencing a lot of shoulder pain. Because I have a career as a medical office assistant, I'm constantly at the desk. Before headsets were really popular, there was a constant, so I was constantly in pain. And I knew, that exercise is supposed to be good for you. So I definitely dipped into more of the gym side of things. I was always active growing up. I played for the Calgary Selects 20 years ago. In high school, I did some wrestling, other fun activities, track and field. So I was always fast. So my body was born to move. But there was a little gap, just trying to kill time. So I definitely needed a little bit more to my days. So I joined the local gym and I started off some classes. I fell in love with TRX and just the mobility factors. You can go fast, you can go slow, you can stretch, you can go hard. Really challenge yourself and your balance. So, a colleague of mine put a bug in my ear. She's a nurse, and she put a bug in my ear, and she said, "Why don't you try fitness modeling?" And at that point, I was kind of taken aback. I've never seen myself as a model, but I've always loved fitness, so I kind of just shrugged that off a bit. And there was something in me that was like, you know what? I love performing. And I Googled fitness modeling competitions. And next thing I knew, I was just a couple months out to prepping for my first fitness show. And that was with NPAA. So I went to work, I trained, lifted weights, and studied. Okay, what is this all about? So when I was on the treadmill or in the sauna, I was reading. Watching YouTube videos. Got into some workshops, so I definitely I registered onto the MPAA workshop, and ever since my second workshop with them, I've been involved with doing workshops and just showing other women, and not so much the men because they have their men divisions, but just showing other women, what to do on stage, as I was virtually clueless when I first stepped on stage.
Oh, I mean, so many people don't know what to do on stage, and I mean, like I said, if you were to poll every the general public, they don't realize, how important posing is and how difficult it is for so many people. But that's a question that we'll get into in a little bit, because I always say, whenever someone first gets started, really taking things seriously in the gym, I mean, if you're to walk up to 100 people, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape, whether it comes down to their diet, their nutrition, how many reps they do, what exercises they do. So many little things add up to that overall package that people end up seeing. And if you're to walk up to one of those people and say, like, oh, hey, what'd you train for this body part? It looks amazing. What works best for them 99% of the time is not going to work the same for you. I mean, you might get similar results where it might work out for you, but you're never going to, especially in this day and age where everyone's like, oh my God, I want that body part. I mean, everyone's just constantly comparing themselves to others. But what was that experience like for you when you first got started working out and sort of realizing that, hey, there's a lot of trial and error in this lifestyle, and it's going to take a while before you figure out, exactly what works best for your individual specific needs?
Well, you're right. You're right. You ask 100 people their opinion on something, you're gonna have 100 different hundreds of comments, right? So it was about a week and a half. It was about actually a couple days after my first competition. I was in touch with a posing coach who later I worked with as my stage coach and fitness coach. So I was really fortunate to meet up with someone right away. My hesitation prior to a competition was how there are so many different types of coaches out there. So I didn't want to reach out to just anybody when it came to stage competition. And I knew that if I don't do it right the first time, it could be very detrimental to my mental health. So I was hesitant to kind of like ask anyone for their opinions because I wanted to see how I could do with the knowledge that I have and the research that I can do on my own. But I was very fortunate to just a couple of days later have a posing coach to help me with my presentation. And about 2 weeks after my first competition, I walked on the IDFA stage and I won my first trophy. So it's really important to keep close to the people that you respect and that you can trust in your heart, right? So do your research, and just don't look for pictures, look for concepts and principles, and if something doesn't feel right, you go with it.
Yeah, I mean, whenever people first get started, especially if they're trying to do bodybuilding, I always say get a coach too. I mean, I've heard so many, of those stories where people are like, "Oh, I did my first few preps without a coach," and I was like, "Oh, you poor thing." Like that must have been just awful. But yeah, a coach can really, really help out. But I love to talk genetics on this podcast because, like we were talking about previously, I mean, so many people they're on Instagram and they're just like, "Oh my God, I want his arms, I want her back, I want their legs." They just don't realize that you can only be the best version of themselves. And I mean, it's just unfortunately, just as human beings, we're always going to compare ourselves to others. But going on that, I mean, whenever someone first gets started working out, they always have that one body part that really, really takes off that they don't have to train as much. And they always have that one body part that just lags behind that they have to drag into oblivion just to get it to catch up. And I mean, I'll give you my examples first. I mean, my back, just because I had jobs all throughout college of working in warehouses and, lifting and loading boxes. And you either got a really nice back or you quit. Those are basically like the two options that were presented to you. But I'm also 6'3", so my legs are just shot. Where I mean, I could train legs, every day. And I mean, those darn calves. I always said I could inject pure muscle into my calves or thighs, and they wouldn't gain an ounce. Like I don't know how it's possible, but I'm just like that. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
Before like stage competition, my glutes were always topic of conversation to people apparently. Um, actually, I think my sister was in the grocery store one day and she was in line and she had to turn around and ask people to stop talking about her sisters. I'm like, my poor sister. She can't get away from it. But now she's all in it too. So she's one of my biggest supporters. So glutes. I have just as much women who admire it as men do. So that's pretty cool. But how that affects me is I wanted to be, honestly, I wanted to be seen more than just that. So I worked on my delts.
No, yeah. And so, what was one body part that really lagged behind that you really had to train to oblivion to get it to catch up?
I'm going to have to say my chest. Yeah. Because the more, like, I love working my back, but now my rear delts are very prominent. So I'm like, okay, I need to get this shoulder part good. But it is also because I'm working at a desk all day too, right?
That doesn't help either. As someone that edits these podcasts and does all this stuff too, yeah, I'm at this desk, at least 4 or 5 hours a day. So yeah, that doesn't help as well. And I might have actually like lost an inch or two in height just because I'm bending over the whole time. I'm always got my back arched. So who knows about that? But yeah, I mean, that's what I love about talking to bodybuilders about this, because if you were to ask anyone in the general public, just like how good does someone look, they basically just look at arms, they look at abs, and then they might look at legs too, where it's like they don't realize that there's a rear delt, they don't realize that there's so many little minute things, which I think is just so fascinating. But one of the things that people do not talk about as much that should be talked about when it comes to adapting a healthy and fit lifestyle is the nutrition, because that's 80 to 90% of your entire journey. What were some of the bigger nutritional changes that you made when you really started to take things seriously in the gym?
Oh, carb cycling. So when my prepping for my first competition, I literally just manipulated my bread intake, and I increased my fats. So I think it's fair to say that I work pretty close with sport med doctor. So him and I talking about food even before the competition was really sparking lights and the fire in me, right? So increased fat intake, manipulated carbs, and as we get down, fast forward a couple of years, I'm all about protein.
What is your go-to protein?
Chicken.
Oh, I gotta have chicken breast as well. I mean, that's my go-to, chicken breast by far for the win. But this lifestyle too is so much more of a mental change than it is a physical change, because I always say, I mean, you can convince your body to work out, but waking up in the morning and doing the same routine over and over, and the cardio and everything that goes with it, what was that adjustment like for you mentally? Because it's one thing that the general public doesn't see when they're looking at people's Instagram profiles. They don't know how it affect you mentally as well.
Yeah. Mentally, we do it. We treat it as a job. Really, if you treat it as a hobby, you're going to get the results of a hobby. If you treat it like a job, your work shows itself. And like with that being said, when I wanted to kind of switch up my education and earn a little bit more money, I didn't want to go to a serving job. I wanted to excel in things that are really important to me. So I decided that I wanted to go to school to be a fitness trainer. 6 years. I also have like other courses. I did studied political science, writing, a couple of other stuff, makeup artistry, and I was like, my heart went to the gym. It's where it lives. It lives there now. And what? And then, yeah, one of the things that I want, there's so many fitness trainers, so many personal trainers, coaches. The one thing that I wanted to be different, I wanted to stand out, is that okay, I want to be a pro fitness model. Like I want that as my credential. So then after my first show, and it turns out like, hey, you know what? I'm not too bad at this. Like let's keep working at it. And I had my coaches like supporting me, those ones that I met. And yeah, a couple of years later, I'm like, okay, I think I'm ready to get certified.
Yeah, I mean, because so many people, they just compete in like one show, and then they're like, oh my god, yeah, I know everything there is to know about health, and then they try to like, and I'm just like, oh, okay, come on. But yeah, it's that pro thing really helps out people when they look at it, because then it's like, oh yeah, she really knows what she's talking about. But one of the myths and stereotypes that I love to bust on this podcast, and we talked about this right before we started recording, and I mean, it's gotten better the last 5 years due to Instagram, but there are still so many women that still have that fear that if they walk into the gym and they pick up one weight, they're going to put on 50 pounds of muscle overnight. And I always say to that, first of all, if that happens to you, give me your number, because I want to spend my entire life savings then just to talk to you and to train with you for one time, because you have found the secret that everyone, at least every man, at least, and a lot of women have been looking for. But did you have that fear when you first got started? And even if you didn't, I mean, how do you like to respond to that? Because I bet you still hear that all the time.
Uh, yes and no. I'm really embracing the way that my body's responding to resistance training. And hence being in a Supergirl costume in the middle of February. Like, let's just do it. Just really embrace on what's going on, and how, like, especially like a message to women, right? Like, embrace the transition periods. Like, you work hard. You've written down your goal. You're working towards a goal. Like, just embrace that. Stay positive about it. See what happens, right? One of the things that I've encountered when I am speaking with women who are not too familiar with the gym, who might want to change a body part or two, is that when they don't know what to do. So, if someone were to hire me, I'd say, okay, why don't we get you first like comfortable in the gym, comfortable with weights? Let's first look at how to lift a weight. There's a science behind it. You're not just going to walk into a gym and get biceps. But if you want biceps, I can show you how to do it.
Hey, I mean, and again, if you do walk in and you do one curl and you get huge arms, definitely give me a call, because I'm waiting for that one person to emerge, and hopefully one day there will be one. But hey, for now there's none. But I mean, one of the biggest things that I always like to say impacts women so much more than it does men. I mean, it impacts men too, but women, I think, a little bit more, is just that confidence boost that working out gives you. I mean, we have heard hundreds of stories on this podcast of women who have made life-changing decisions, or it just helped them better their lives. And I always say that's the one thing that you can take from the gym and use to impact every single aspect of your life. How have you taken that confidence boost that working out has given you and used that to impact your life?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I always struggled with personal appearance wise. Like, I've always struggled with confidence. I've had people like, even like a woman who I really respected, maybe 10 years ago, has said, like, if you change this about your physical appearance, you could be more confident. I thought, like, thanks for your opinion. But I'm going to work on internal confidence, because, that's where my faith lives. So more about confidence. I'd have to say that the more you try, the harder things get. And it really is about perseverance and moving, through your goals, or through the day, or through the hour. When it comes to prepping for a competition, the harder I work, the more my shortcomings come out. So it's not just about, okay, I'm going to go to work, do my job, go to the gym after. We're working now on patience, because I'm cutting and I'm constantly hungry. Back to the 100 opinion thing. Every time I opened up a dish, someone has an opinion about what I'm eating. Okay, I'd love to explain it, but I really just want to eat this.
It's just so fascinating, how, so many different people are able to take that confidence boost. But mentally, how do you deal with those days when you're really, really hungry and you're in like basically the dog days of prep? Because I honestly don't think I could ever do that, just because, I like food too much. But I mean, it's just so fascinating how you're able to convince your mind. But how do you do that? I mean, it just takes so much willpower, I think, to be able to even get through a single prep.
I mean, it's not that it gets easier, you just get better at it. I've heard that before, and I really have to agree with that statement. Cry. If you want to cry, cry. Just just do it on your own time. Don't do it at work. Nobody nobody understands. And things get better. You just have to remember that things get better. Like, without the darkness, like where there's darkness, there is light. And going through the preps, going 100% in, it really is rewarding, and you get more confidence after the fact. It doesn't happen right away. It could be like, sometimes it's 2 days after, sometimes it's 3 weeks later, sometimes it's 2 months later. And I love sharing my story, because it gives other people, kind of something to talk about, or something to look forward to. And they think, oh, like, I know Katherine from The Office. Yeah, now she's this, because you have your makeup and your hair done, and she's beautiful on stage. Like, if she can do it, I can do it. Like, no matter how big your goal is, it's frightening, but it's possible.
Well, and that's just such a great message too, because I mean, that's why I love having people come on and share their stories. Because I think the more stories people hear, the more they realize that, like, hey, bodybuilders or people that are into health and fitness, they're just average people just like everyone else. And I mean, it's just, they just have that extra thing of dedication and drive that, I mean, I think if everyone was really put to it, they could more than likely accomplish. But the hardest thing that I would have never guessed in a million years, and we talked about this when we first got started, is, I would have never guessed that posing for so many of these athletes is the hardest thing. I mean, we hear that all the time, that it's harder than your working out, it's harder than your nutrition. I like to compare it now to being a perfect driver, where you can be a great driver, you can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser, you can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. What has your experience with posing been like?
Oh, so my first show, I didn't do it right. And I can tell, like, I kind of, I'm looking at the other girls too after the fact. I'm like, okay, like, I need some work done. Um, but then I practiced. And even before getting pro cards, I did it at the gym in front of people. Like, I know we're there to work out, but I'm also there. I'm working to be a pro, and this is what I need to do in the gym in my heels and in my like sportwear to get where I need to go. Mind you, I did try my best to do it like after hours. It was 24-hour gym, so not when it's busy, but go. I mean, everyone's there to do their own thing, anyways. If you happen to like catch someone's eye, it's don't be embarrassed. Like you have a goal. This is where your goal originates from. So why would you be embarrassed being in heels when you've got a competition coming up? But I did practice lots and videotaped it for my own personal feedback, my own critiquing. You have your opposing coach. You just stay on it. Like, don't leave it to the last minute. Because even with all my practicing that I did, I go on stage and it's a whole other atmosphere. And sometimes the music would kind of mess with me too, because I want to be faster and kind of dance with it. But but no.
Well, I mean, I always say you can never practice posing enough. I mean, that's one thing that we hear all the time on here. But what is it like wearing those high heels? Because I always say, don't these people go through enough, and then you got to make them wear those high heels on the stage? What is that like for you, and how much more difficult does it make posing? Because I think posing's hard enough without those heels, but then with heels, I mean, it's very, very difficult.
If we look past the pain of your back and your calves, it really accentuates the woman's body, and that, like, I love about it. And then the more you practice in heels, the more graceful you get, and then you just kind of you feel like a model. Yeah, and that's what it's about, right? Like fitness modeling, like show off, make them work. But it's hard, but it's worth it.
I mean, I always say, if they ever made heels for men, that's the first thing I'd wear, just because that might be the one thing that gets my calves to grow. I don't know. That might be the one thing that I'm missing out on. So who knows? But out of your poses that you do, what is your favorite pose to do, and what is your least favorite pose to do?
Um, I love the aspects of a bikini model. As soon as we get more into like the figure side of things, it's kind of where I feel um, maybe out of my comfort zone a little. To me, it just, I mean, every woman who does figure has every right. Like, you look fabulous, like double bicep it up for sure. But I love yeah, like the grace of a bikini model. So softer, a little bit more flow. But I do love training my body to be really like bigger. I'm tiny right now because I've been training for the physique of changing it up a bit. So I feel a little bit more tinier, but I mean, that's body dysmorphia for us too, right? So comes with the gig.
So how have you differed your training then, if you're trying to decrease your size a little bit?
Well, I did decrease my size a little bit because just by decreasing my reps, time that I'm spending in the gym, because when we change our training up, it's going to change our body up. So I'm giving myself a little bit of a break, trying to steer away from injury. And then when I start competing for stage again, I think I have reason to believe that my body's going to respond that much more.
And then yeah, it's always constantly mixing things up too. I mean, if you're going to plateau if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, and that's one thing that I think a lot of first timers really don't understand about, the healthy and fit lifestyle. But what is that feeling like for you when you get to walk up on stage and show off all that hard work that you've worked months upon months on?
It's liberating. It's refreshing. It's rewarding. It's all about presentation at this point. So, train like a beast, look like a beauty. I'm not that fun to talk to when I'm prepping in a gym.
If you were, I'd say you weren't working hard enough.
Right. But it's kind of fun too, though. Like when I live in a small town, so when people see my body changing and they're kind of in awe and they have questions or they just want to talk about their training or their nutrition, like I want it to be an open platform, but at the same time, I'm like, if I'm resting here for longer than 2 minutes, like I have to start this all over again. Please, I can't be here for 3 hours.
That's one thing that I enjoy, having a little bit of a workout set at my home too. So that's one of the benefits that I say too. But yeah, it's just so great that you're able to, have that impact. But what is your go-to post-show meal?
Hamburgers. And it has to be. It has to be. I love burgers. I
Is there any place in particular that you enjoy the most?
Usually it's the shows will end usually quite late, so it's kind of wherever I can go. I don't miss an opportunity to have a McFlurry.
Damn, now I want to go and get one just by her saying it. This is product placement for McDonald's, everyone. Yeah, but I always said I would just rent a Five Guys basically and just be like, here's $1,000. You're gonna feed me until I were to puke or pass out. That's definitely what I would do. But another myth that we love to talk about on the or I mean on the podcast is that so many people don't understand that look that you guys put on stage, that is not a sustainable look. You're not going to look that way 24/7. And I mean, that is one thing that I think shocks a lot of people because I think there's shows, like Biggest Loser and stuff like that, where people go on and, they may lose a significant amount of weight and some of them are able to keep that weight off. So people just assume, hey, these bodybuilders, they work just as hard, if not even harder than some of these people. And, they should be able to look that same way, 24/7. And they don't realize that, that the way that you manipulate your body, I mean, just all the stuff that you have to do to get that stage look, it's not sustainable. What was that like for you when you first figured that out? And has it gotten easier for you to accept that, this is going to be the best version that I'm going to present for a while once you leave that stage? Has it gotten easier for you to accept that as your career's gone on?
Yeah, one of the messages that like I really like getting out on social media is body positive. Um, and it's easier to stay in shape than it is to get into shape. But for me, like as soon as you kind of manipulate a diet and you get into a habit, of cooking for yourself constantly and eating healthy and not keeping your pantry full of those wants rather than those needs, it gets easier to eat. But it's more rewarding when you're out in a restaurant and supporting your local, your local restaurant. Like it just, indulge. Yeah, there's definitely a pressure for myself personally to every time I step on stage, I have to be better. I have to look better than what I did before. Those are my wants, right? And that's why we do it. Kind of be better than we were yesterday. I don't know. Everything has its seasons, right?
Well, I always say too, it's just like starting your own business. You got to spend money to make money. You got to put on weight if you want to put on muscle. I mean, those are two things. And again, if you found a secret formula that makes you put on muscle while still staying lean, I mean, I'm all ears for it, but no one's proven that yet. And I mean, I'm not even going to get started on like those 1% genetic freaks that I hate to talk about where they literally can. I mean, they're literally just blessed with the best metabolism and genetics. I mean, I have a friend who he could eat 20 Snickers bars a day and he wouldn't put on a pound. And I tell him, I'm like, I hope God's playing a cruel joke on you, or one day you're gonna wake up being like 400 pounds, and then I'll say, that's what you get. But hey, it hasn't happened yet. But I'll keep everyone updated, just in case it does happen. But yeah, it's just insane. But a question that I asked everyone right before New Year's that I asked the viewers is, what's one body part that everyone's looking forward to training the most? And it was arms, back, abs, legs, and shoulders. And I should have known. Arms won by like 20%. So I always like to ask the guests that are on. And you told us if you wanted to get nice biceps, talk to you. So what does an arm workout look like for you when you're training?
I'll usually focus on like all upper body. Um, I do keep my splits body specific when I'm training for a competition. But one of the things that I was focusing on the last couple months were um, tying up, my legs and upper body, because my arms are more responsive than my hamstrings, for example. So I'd kind of like those to match.
No, I mean, it's always ever evolving too. I mean, and people don't realize that. Yeah, like the average person, they could have really big arms and they can have small, not as big hamstrings, and no one would care. But for bodybuilding, yeah, everything has to be proportioned perfectly. So if you increase one thing, you got to increase it all, really. Basically, if you're good proportions. So yeah, that's. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. But I mean, we're talking in the middle of a pandemic, and it's just so fascinating to have people on that are still living this healthy and fit lifestyle. How has the pandemic affected you? Are gym shut down where you are, or what's the current situation there?
Oh yeah, the gym shut down. I think March 18th or 19th, like just shortly after St. Patrick's Day. Um, One of the things that registered in my head every day was I didn't want to compromise product quality. And what I mean by that is like for my work, like patients need to be talked to. If they can't be seen, they at least need to be talked to. And not and having so much fear of like, okay, are we going to be able to come in today? We did the best that we could in that respect. And even if we didn't have answers, it was still important to like say that, like, I don't know. I found it really stressful that everything was closing and we couldn't have anybody answering the phone on the other line. So mentally, that was exhausting. However, I needed something to keep me going, right? And when I didn't want to compromise the product quality of my clients. Like I reached out to my clients and said, I'm here if you need it. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm open. Um, you know, uh, Darwin, right? Like it's the strongest are those able to um,
Adapt.
adapt. Exactly. So that was thanks. Yeah, and that's exactly where I was kind of going with my daily attitude. I'm like, okay, let's just adapt to the best we can. I did pick up some extra equipment online. Uh, Tried to keep it local because those are one of the things that were going off, right? Like shop local, support local. So I tried to keep it within Canada for sure. If not more, Calgary based. Um,
Yeah, don't buy from those damn Americans.
well, I was kind of getting like from another country,
Yeah.
but I just didn't want to go there.
Yeah.
Verbally, but now I did a lot of resistance training with bands and increased it to high intensity interval training. Just kind of changed it up. I was fortunate to register for an online competition.
So how does an
Um,
online competition work? How's that go?
this one was really fun. So NPAA put this one on, and it started off with a social media contest. So get all your friends and your followers to vote for you online. So I put on one of my old bikinis, and I was like, okay, I like this one. It wasn't my body wasn't like stage appropriate, but it was the best that I had, and I was proud of it. So I'm like, okay, let's do this. Put on some makeup, do my hair, vote for me. I want to win this competition. So you had your three categories. You had your bikini, fitness, and figure. Just the way that my body is compositioned, I thought, I'd have a better chance of winning figure. I think that was kind of strategic, even though I looked maybe more of a fitness model. I'm like, I'm gonna go figure. My last competition, I was a figure athlete. I have a figure suit. Let's do this. And I did end up being top 3 in that category. where then you were invited to a Zoom competition. So this was May 2nd, and that kept me going. As tired and drained, mentally exhausted as I was from work, I'm like, okay, well, I got to do this. Just do this exercise. Get your chicken cooked. Eat your rice. And May 2nd came, and it was down to me and another athlete. So I was really proud to win first place. My hair, they call it a hole because of your roots. And I had a hole. My sister came over and did my hair. So, I had a little bit of, I had some support there, right? But like I have my living room, I just made it third way, and, the judges judged you. And then you got a prize package in the mail. It was awesome.
That sounds a lot better than when I first heard about it. I was like, oh, so you just like film it. But yeah, that actually sounds awesome. And I'm surprised more people aren't doing that. But do you have any plans of competing this year? Or are you just taking the year off to, make a changes? Or what's your current, mindset looking like for the rest of this year?
Yeah, that's a really good question because we don't know what the year looks like. I would have to say that if you were to ask me early March, I had my whole life planned because I was so confident in myself and where I was going and, who I wanted to meet and what was next for me. So like COVID totally like messed up my plans, but definitely helped me refocus my vision. So, kind of moving backwards to May, I won my competition. I'm flying high. Everything's peachy keen. You have hope, stay positive. I ended up losing my mom on May 7th. So I was like, oh. And that was hard on itself because nobody knew, like, what are you going to do? Like, what does the burial ceremony look like? What does our life celebration look like? Like, nobody knew. So I'm like, okay, I can now understand the importance of grieving and why we do things the way that we do. Because it's heavy. Like that was one of the heaviest things that I've had to carry around. But there is positivity about that. We're definitely going to wait till the spring. How that affects my training, though, was me thinking about, okay, well, what's next for me? And then I received a vision, through social media that there's pageantry. And I'm like, I love the concepts and principles behind pageants. I'm like, I can do this. Like, I'm enough. I'm beautiful enough. I'm smart enough. I'm enough. I can do this. This is what I want. And I'm like, I think mom would want that for me too. So my training switched, like I'm going to focus on legs, the shoulders, and the mental preparation, to keep going.
And that's just wow. I'm so sorry about your mom. And that's just I mean I had a friend whose dad died during this, not from COVID or anything like that, but like yeah, they were even talking about how like yeah, with the burial, yeah, you could only have like a handful of people there, and it was only like immediate family only, and it's just so weird how that's what it is like right now. But one of the problem is that a lot of women do talk about is their shoulders. So what have you been doing to get your shoulders to grow? Because I mean, if I were to go back and take out clips from every single one of my interviews, especially with the women, we're talking 75 to 80% of them would just say like, what was the problem? Or I'd be like, oh yeah, shoulders. It's ridiculous, but I definitely think that's a huge one for women, especially.
I like dumbbells. I like the movements where they're your body's separated and you're not confined to a machine. I find sorry, I'm not very
No worries.
I have my scripts. I don't like the restrictions of the machines. I think that's where a lot of injuries happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and again, it's different for everyone else. I mean, if one thing gets someone's shoulder, looking good, and another one gets another, I mean, it's all trial and error. I've honestly been thinking about just renaming this podcast and trial and error too, because that's really a thing that I deal with. But what advice do you have for people during this pandemic? Because I always say, with this pandemic, one of the biggest excuses that we hear of all the time from people who train and, are trainers as well, is that, people say, oh, I don't have the time to get in shape or work out. That excuse does not work right now, because so many people have so much more free time and it's so much more accessible to them. But like you were talking about, I mean, with the women who just didn't know any better about training, so many people just want to get in shape, but they don't have the skills to do it. Where they have that drive and motivation, they just don't know how. But what advice would you have for people that are looking to get started just during this pandemic? Because I mean, with all the gyms shut down and with them, maybe not having, workout stuff at home, there still are ways that people can get in shape. But if someone were to contact you and say, like, hey, how do I get started with this? What would you say to them?
Well, I would say, write down your goals, pick one, and like master that one. If you find you're having time, you can maybe focus on another goal on your list. Integrate that one as well. But we have to start somewhere. Pick a goal, crush that goal, like work on that every single day. We don't just wake up one morning and we're really healthy eaters and we've got our ideal figure because that's what we wanted. No, we worked on it every single day, through the hard times. And if 80% of your energy is all you have, and that's your 100, like, good job. Keep up the good work. I mean, not everything's going to be perfect, but every attempt is a stepping stone moving forward for sure.
I mean, you're gonna fail so much with this healthy and fit lifestyle. I'm just gonna say it out there. You're gonna fail. I mean, it's going to happen. And I always say, like, people in, our generation, where, they want everything now and they want everything yesterday, where, I mean, this is not a lifestyle that you would subscribe to if you have that belief system, because it is never going to work out that way. But yeah, so I always just tell everyone, just like, keep an open mind, and plus just start walking too. I mean, if you're able to use both of your legs to walk, that's the number one thing where you can just get started. Where, because I mean, it's free, it's not going to cost you anything, and it's really going to help you just get that base. But going off that, what is your relationship with cardio like? Because for me, I used to hate it more than life itself. Where, I mean, now the only thing I do is, after I'm done lifting weights, I have so much free time now where I'll literally just walk for like 100 minutes on the treadmill and, just get like 8 or 9 miles done. And I'll just be watching a movie the entire time. That's the only way I stay on that long, is because I'll just have a movie. The movie has to be an hour and 40 minutes long too. I check on, like HBO and stuff like that, but I just have to be entertained, because if the movie ever like, if we were to ever have like a power outage or something like that, I would, just be done. But what has your relationship with cardio been like?
Oh, it changes every once in a while. So my favorite type of cardio, I know it depends on who you ask, but it was baseball. I mean, I hit the ball and I can run really fast around those bases. I didn't have to hit the ball hard, right? Just strategically and run around the bases. And ball hockey with my friends a couple years ago, like, that was my favorite type of cardio. Now I wear watches to kind of make sure that my heart rate's in a specific zone for X amount of minutes. Um, it depends on, like, my training cycle. If I can avoid it, I will in the gym. And I think it's just because I get so excited lifting weights that I feel, I'm like, oh, okay, I don't want to be on a treadmill right now. But I am so fortunate that the treadmill is right in front of a mountain. So if I have to use a treadmill, sorry, if my plans suggest for me to use a treadmill, then that's where I'm doing my visualizing, like, what's my next goal? Okay, well, I see myself, whether it's on stage, I see myself. And I know it sounds really, like, cheesy, but, I get that opportunity to see myself, either holding a trophy, or this is how I want to walk on stage. And, I see myself, like, in a crown. It's the visualizing is where I'll do that on my cardio time, because if not that, then listening to inspirational, motivational speakers. Like, I got to keep my mind active to what I really want. And I guess that's my best relationship with cardio. Time's gonna pass anyways.
Yeah, you definitely have to keep your mind occupied, because if you're not thinking about anything and you're walking, it's going to be the worst thing that you've ever done in your entire life. I mean, you definitely have to have that mindset. I'm just going to give everyone an insight onto my baseball career, because I was one of those kids. Everyone has that one kid where I was 6'3" when I was in 8th grade. I maxed out in height in 8th grade. I was that one kid that always grows really. So can you imagine me running around those bases? I basically had to, it had to be in the gap or it had to be a home run, for me to at least get to. I mean, I wasn't slow, but I was out of our team of like 13 people. I was probably like the 10th or the ninth fastest. So it's just, yeah, it was not in the cards for me to just do that. So yeah, cardio for me, yeah, it was always a struggle. But if we were to talk to you a year from today, where would you like to be at in your bodybuilding journey? Where would you like to be at just in your overall life? What are some goals that you would like to have achieved if we were to talk to you a year from today?
A year from today. Wow. So, ooh, I've now stepped up and into a role of Miss Calgary 2020, as you mentioned. If you were to ask me if that's what I wanted 3 months ago, it wasn't. My ultimate goal for the last 2 years was IPE, International Pro Elite Fitness Model. So for me to ask this question, I might be selling myself short because now I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, okay, like if I can, persevere through all this hardships that I've had in the last 4 years of my life, if I can keep persevering, keep staying positive, keep having faith, being open-minded. I just want to see where we can go. But yeah, I have a new role in my community, so I'm excited to see where we can go from here. But for me to step on stage again, I would absolutely love that. But even earning the title of Miss Calgary 2020 has provided me a scholarship to a national stage. So I'm like, okay, I'm excited to do the work to get there.
I mean, I've heard this 1,000 times, but I'll repeat it again. I mean, if you don't enjoy the journey especially when it comes to bodybuilding, I feel really sorry for you, because if you're really just doing it all for that time that you're on stage, you're going to have a horrible life. I'm just going to say that if you're doing it just for that. Yeah, you have to enjoy the process as well, and I'm glad that you do enjoy the process.
Yeah, and actually on that note too, I had to take a step back 1 year. I had every intention. This was 2 years ago. I ended up competing the following fall, but 2 years ago, life was just, it was, in my perspective, it was, I mean, there was probably nothing wrong with it, but I wasn't enjoying it. So 2 weeks before enrolling in the competition, I'm like, you know what, I really need to take a step back, assess why I'm doing this, how I'm going to do this, what kind of barriers, like, what I need. And, I talked to my coach and, we just felt like that was the best thing for me. But it was, ultimately it was my decision, because I'm like, okay, if, me trying to get this, pro card and I lose all my friends and I'm unhappy and I don't get it, I'm like, okay, what was the point of all this? So yeah, I think after that too, like I worked on patience, just becoming more self-aware of, the environments around me. And, sometimes I needed to take a step back and reassess my situation, because you're absolutely right. Like if you're not doing it for the enjoyment, then, what are you doing?
Oh, I mean, and I've heard some people on the podcast have said that, and I was like, oh my God, you poor thing. I mean, but hey, some people do that. But if someone were to come up to you and say, Katherine, we made the decision, you can change one thing about the bodybuilding world, and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you would like to see changed?
It's a really good question. Maybe the price of it. Honestly, I feel like I could get more stage time if if I didn't have to like save all my money to get on stage. Because I'm like, okay, do I go on stage, or do I get a new car? Like just little things like that. I would probably, I don't know, like you buy chicken in bulk because it's on sale, you know.
Bodybuilding is not a sport that you're going to make money in unless you're literally like the Mr. Olympia or the Miss Olympia. And even then, you're not even making that much. So that even adds more to like just how amazing these competitors are, because it's like they're not doing it for the money. They're not doing it for, the the benefit other than just, the title and, the respect and the mindset that it gives you, which is just, I mean, it's just so awesome. And before we wrap things up, Catherine, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to?
That is such a good question. I absolutely love my friends and my family for being so supportive with me. At first, it was kind of like, you're doing what? But now it's like, okay, now you're doing that. um, yeah, in this podcast, I referenced coaches that had helped me get here, and that's Lisa Sharrock Dardis and Tim Dardis. Yeah, they were so supportive in my journey to get to where I am today. And yeah, my NPAA fitness family, so supportive. I think I covered a lot. I mean, I have my sponsors who are also my friends. That's Cupid's Corner, who helps keep me muscular and feminine. She helps keep me with the feminine side of things. Always Strong Apparel and Provida Energy Tea. And of course, my gym, Athletic Evolution. They've been just fabulous and helped me just staying positive and clapping throughout all my adventures.
And that's just so great. And I'll leave a link to all that stuff down below. And is there anything else that you'd like to say before we wrap things up?
I just really want to say thank you so much, Ryan. Like, this has been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, it's been great getting to know you too. So thanks for sharing your story.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Everyone, go and give her a follow down below. I'll leave a link to her Instagram page. Buyer beware, though. You will get inspired to get off that couch and stop eating those Twinkies and, get in shape. But again, you guys, Catherine, we cannot thank you enough for coming on and sharing your story. It was a great pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
Absolutely. So this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the Spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.